there, it's Polly here. Ooh, drinking tea. Oh, masala chai. I am taking a break from burlesque, which has been a fabulous thing to do, highly recommended. Mr. Snoots and I are pretty thrilled because a Kickstarter has turned up. Now, one of my favourite, let's call it old school rules publications. A game that is designed to work on the base of old versions of D&D, but make a game that has its own particular characteristics or rules interpretations or rules differences. My favourite of these is Castles and Crusades, which I have reviewed before. They've had a few print runs, and as you can see, these are great books. They were black and white production, very sturdy, and it's a fantastic game. The art's, grayscales, whatever. However, after many years, they put out a second edition, and that has arrived as a Kickstarter, and I'm really excited to see it because, as I said, it is my favourite, essentially, D&D redo. It's in the classic 3 books, so Player's Manual, a Monster Manual, and in this case a Castle Keeper's Guide as opposed to a Judge's Manual or DM's Guide. It's worth getting this new edition, even if you have the game already. There are enough changes in this new edition to make it worthwhile, but it is the same core game. Okay, so a few basics. You can see they're beautifully produced hardcovers. These guys have their own print shop now, so they're actually able to get stuff out. Orange Hitler's tariffs and so on have reamed the industry over in the USA. Small publishers have gone down in flames. People can't get paper. Print shops going down. It's hell out there, folks. It's absolute hell. These guys had enough sort of money and connections, and they're obviously doing good business. They've made their own print shop, and they are actually offering it as a printing facility for other publishers to get their games done through. So more power to Troll-Lord Games. Thanks, guys. They're a bit. I've worked with them. They're a bit strange to work with, but they are nice enough chaps. But you can see they are very well produced, and the main thing you'll see in these new ones is, of course, like more modern D&D games, they are full colour productions, gloss paper, and full colour illustrations all the way through. So you can see it's a different level of production entirely, and not that much more expensive. The Kickstarter, it came for me with DM screens and some adventures and so on. They have their own magazines supporting this. They have some considerable publications on their own worlds. Pick up my one with them sometime, which is Town of Callas, which is kind of the city adventure I always wished to be able to play. Plug! But why I love this game. Original Dungeons and Dragons, that's the sort of the basic D&D and the advanced, had about them a certain real charm. You didn't have massive superpowers that somehow accumulated level by level, nor did you thunder up levels the way you did in 3rd edition and onwards. You really had to work for levels, and there wasn't that much extra that your character could do between levels. You didn't really gain powers, you gained hit points. If you were a magic user, you gained more spells. If you were a fighter, you became better at fighting. But you didn't somehow suddenly gain all these sort of cleave and greater cleave and whirlwind attacks, all these weird things. So it kept it very simple. You were a average Joe working to become a hero and do great things, not a superhero on a predestined path for glory. So it has a different feel to these older iterations of D&D than the later ones. and I like it. It's got it just feels like a wider world to me, because there's not so much hand waving magic, not quite so many airships, and more feel of grounding within the settings. But anyway, a fault with these earlier variants of D&D was they were hard to learn, because for some reason what they would do is, instead of making a unified system, they would cook up a system for a problem in the game, and they would kind of just nail it on with no sudden realization that this is using a completely different set of dice, set of rules, different styles to the other systems they got in the game. So for instance, rolls to hit done on a d20, roll high. You want a 20, not a 1. Someone's got an armor class, you were trying to roll a number high enough to beat that armor class. But if you wanted to do turning undead with your cleric, go back. Hang on, let's install that. Back. Then that was done as a 2d6 roll. But thief skills, picking locks and climbing walls and all this sort of thing, hiding in cover, was done using a percentile system. So they were, in the words of my Australian people, all over the place like a mad woman's shit. What this game does, Castles and Crusades, is it makes one unified system that uses everything, and this is its cleverness. They call it the siege system, which I think is rather sweet. It's a d20 roll high system for everything. Your characteristics obviously roll on 3d6, and they give you bonuses. What you do is you have to nominate some characteristics that are your advantage characteristics, your bonus characteristics. Your character class will dictate one of those. A rogue character will have dexterity as one of its highlighted characteristics. A wizard will have intelligence as one of their highlighted characteristics. But what happens is you're trying to make a saving throw against those characteristics to do things. That might be to achieve a skill roll, that might be to use an ability. D20 roll high over a challenge number. That challenge number is an 18, or if it's a highlighted characteristic, a 12. So it's way easier to make rolls for your highlighted characteristic, and that kind of brings some cunning character design in play. For instance, if I wanted to be a thief, a roguey sort, all right, so my dexterity is highlighted because that's what I've chosen, but I've got 2 more to choose. Well, now I've got choices. I could choose charisma because, I want to be the persuasive kind of talk more out of trouble, fast talk and storytelling kind of thief. But on the other hand, wisdom is used for gives you bonuses for saving against magic and these sorts of things. On the other hand, intelligence is used as a perception roll for spotting traps, for seeing things, for spotting clues. Do I want to be persuasive or sharp-eyed? Well, hang on, I got 3. I could take dexterity and charisma and, intelligence. Right. Not wanting to be more resistant to magic and good at figuring out puzzles. Not planning on doing anything involving strength, are we? So, you get that choice. Again, a fighter. Okay, well, I'm going to choose... I have strength chosen for me. But you could be a charismatic fighter. I will highlight my charisma. Yes, I am a swashbuckler sort. And so, you could... And dexterous. Yes, I'll be a swashbuckler. I'll be charisma, dexterity, and strength. Ha-ha! How about you? Errol Flynn, eat your heart out. Yikes, and away! So, you get this sort of characterfulness in there immediately. Your saving throws against various dangers are done for each of these characteristics. If, for instance, you were trying to duck a deadfall, like a falling rock, or, a spear launched at you from a trap, out of a wall, obviously you'd be rolling something like dexterity, saving throws to try and dive and roll out of the way. But, like I said, that perception might be the thing that picks up the fact that, you've spotted that clue over there, or you've seen those guys hiding in the bushes, slowly pacing you. Looking to stab you in the back. And ducking a fireball, resisting a mind control sort of thing is going to be a wisdom. So it all ties in to the one thing. General skills as well. The game says in its core, we haven't put in different skills because we just want you to we want you to role play. We want you to get in there. If you've said that, so this is my character Tadric is a mighty pirate. All right, well, you've said that, so we can probably presume that Tadric can climb ropes and knows which end of a ship is the pointy end and can probably sail one. Whereas, if you've said, my cleric is from this one of the elven clerics of this mighty forest. Okay, we presume you know your way around a forest and probably know which end of a deer has all the pointy bits that you want to avoid, etc. But you can add in skills if you want. So this siege system is very cute. Your level adds to your dice roll. So you roll your dice and you add your level to it. That's the score. Beat the level. So very, very simple to work out, and it goes through everything. Using your thief skills, turning undead, saving versus magic, the whole thing. It's all in there. So that is an aspect I really liked. 7 core character classes, and that includes things that came out through later versions of D&D, such as bards and barbarians and monks and paladins and these sorts of things. They've got a nice one in here, knight, which I rather like. In, say, some of the AD&D versions, it was a cavalier, but a mounted fighter. So there's lots of very cool stuff that you can choose to be. It also has a tack on there of assassin. I have always strongly objected to having assassin in games as a character class. For one thing, it's evil, and for another thing is it's kind of a job description, not really a class. It's like if someone breaks into your house and strangles you in your sleep, or poisons your food, that's kind of a rogue thing. Whereas if they are up on a rooftop and snipe you out with a crossbow, that seems like a bit of a rangery fighter thing. But anyway, what this new set of rules brings in is some additional details for higher level characters that were not in the previous versions of these rules. So you pick your classes and then you pick your race. Now, if you've picked a non-human race, they often have a set of bonuses they get. But if you are a non-human, you only highlight 2 characteristics, not 3. So that's how they keep kind of humans level with some of the non-humans. So for instance, a dwarf gets a lot of dice throw bonuses to save versus various things like magic and poison and these sorts of things, and he can see in the dark, and he's got a whole lot of different abilities, and the cost of that is he'll only highlight 2 characteristics rather than 3. But in here they've got rules for being elves and gnomes and halflings and half-orcs and dwarves and you name it, there it is. And there are some additional race ideas further in the back if someone wants to go full orc or whatever, they are in there. What these rules bring in that weren't in the other ones was every single one has some additional information and so forth when you get to 13th level and higher. Again, doesn't come into my play very much because we tend to play relatively low. I'm always starting first level campaigns with people, and after a few years they might have climbed up to be about 7th. But they do have these 13th level and above abilities. So what do? Well, they'll give you some special choices. So for instance, for a bard, gives you the ability to sway larger crowds, And there'll be other powers that you'll start getting. You'll get these at 13th, you'll get these at 15th, you'll get these at 17th. So you do build to be a little bit more spectacular at the higher levels. The other thing that this game does is it has a few powers and abilities that you pick up as you go higher. Not like 3rd edition D&D, where you could build a nightmare. Ladies and gentlemen, a nightmare. Any competent player could create characters in that would just wreck a game in a nanosecond. Not so in this, but you do get little things. So you get to certain levels with certain things, you will get a little bonus here and there. So they have Illusionist as a character. So for instance, once you hit 4th level, you gain sharp senses, so you become a little less susceptible to other people's illusions. You're gaining skill at it. You can tell. That cat's repeating itself. It's on a loop. And likewise, the fighters. What do we get? Yeah, you get some +1 bonuses to one weapon of choice, and so on as you go up. So we skip all of those often frustrating weapon specialization things that you would sometimes get in basic D&D and advanced D&D. It's built into your character advancement chart, as it gives you some things. You can choose one weapon and gain these bonuses to it. So it does give you some extra flavor and bonuses without bogging you down in extra rules or breaking the Dungeon Master's brain by coming up with a hyper specialist designed to completely eviscerate anything he offers you in a campaign. So those higher levels are all new material. Apart from that, in the player's manual, those are the main differences. The production, as I said, you can see it's way flasher. I actually really enjoyed the black and white. And in some cases, these gloss pages actually sometimes feel to me more fragile than the hardier black and white pages. But what the hell. So, in other words, if you had the previous version, you could run this quite happily, unless somehow your characters are all busting out through 13th level or so. Spells, equipment, everything is here. Now, one thing I love about Castles and Crusades is its monster manual. You will see they have taken their cue from the original monster manual. So there's a centaur, there's a red dragon, there's the guys underground. It's lovely. I love this. This is a wonderful homage. The expected creatures are in here. Your elves, your orcs, your goblins, your dragons of various hues, etc. They are in here. There are also a number of creatures which are very specifically theirs that they have made. They have their own world edgy, which some of their creatures are in here. If you've got people who play D&D a lot, these can be good to spring on people because it makes you think, what the hell am I looking at? But the expected creatures from D&D are in here. But again, they've smoothed them over. So just little touches that I like, which is why I like this game. It's got the little touches. So in original Dungeons and Dragons, monster manual, your goblinoids had sort of a weird progression. You had kobolds, which is a D4, goblins, which is a D8 -1, so technically they could start off dead with 0 hit points. All right. Orcs, which is 1 hit dice, gnolls, which are 2 hit dice. Then you go to bugbears, which are 3 hit dice, and so on. You've got this kind of like the curve of goblinoid hit you on the headiness. These guys, they just looked at that and said, you know what? Kobolds D4, goblins roll a D6, and orcs roll a D8. So it's just a smoother, more logical thing. And that's what I like. They've gone through and they've taken more logical courses with things. And there are some D&D monsters which are actually copyrighted. So I seem to remember, let me check, they couldn't use Beholder because that's actually a copyrighted term. But they have I think it's the Eye Tyrant. Yep. It's not in there, folks. I think it's in here as the Eye Tyrant. Beholder with the serial numbers filed off. But, again, the monster manual, Beholder and so on, it's not it's not a terribly clear monster. It's got these weird spells and whatever, and it often leaves, yeah, but what does this do? They've used clearer rules for these sorts of things. So, in fact, if you're wanting to play original D&D for some reason, I would use these guys' monster manual because it clarifies things. It's an easier monster manual, and these are guys who've been playing D&D forever, like me, and they just took their house mods where they had, decided, oh, we think, you know what, this will be easier if we present this thing this way and break down what it does in this way. They've brought that to life for us. So again, well done. So, but one thing in here which I do like, which wasn't in the original monster manual at all, really, is experience points for taking down these monsters. What they are worth in experience for defeating, which was something that was weirdly missing from the original monster manual. And there were different systems for trying to figure out, oh, well, hang on, I'll divide the threat of the monster equals your hit dice divided by the monster's hit dice. No, they put it all in there, so a way easier system. So yeah, this is an excellent publication, and of course we get to that bit. The least used books in any D&D iteration or clone are the Castle Keeper's DM Guide, Judge's Manual, whatever you want to call them. They were always the biggest, they're always the heaviest, they're packed full of stuff, and you do not need a single word of it to play. Not one goddamn word of it. You just don't. But they're kind of fun and useful, and like all of these high-end D&D inspired games, it covers the expected areas. So it will go into detail about sea combat, air combat, massed army combat. It will go into how to run wilderness adventures, how to run dungeon adventures, how to handle NPCs, how to handle, diseases or natural disasters, how to forage for food on the move, etc. It also, of course, has things in here like the treasure tables, which is the only bit you really use. And this has it has complex rules for equipment wastage, which again, you're never going to use, but they are there if someone wants to be a pet ant. It has some useful suggestions in this one. So it will have things like alternative methods of character generation. It will have alternative styles for character modifiers and so on. Harsher versions if you want less bonuses hanging about. This brings in a skill system where you can say, all right, well, instead of just saying go for it, you actually have specific skills that you use, and here's how you choose them. They're rolled in the same way. It's a dexterity-based thing, but it's like you could say, all right, well, my character's choosing, I don't know, seafaring, and I'm also choosing wilderness survival because that's what I want to be able to do. I'm looking forward to being marooned someday. They put in some extra characteristics like beauty, completely unnecessary, but there it is. They put in rules for different ways of rolling and creating hit points. I quite like these, by the way. They've got one that is worth doing, which is, what was it? Offset rules. So they've got many different suggestions, but one I quite like was that you can, if you've got a highlighted constitution, if you're rolling hit dice to go up a level, you roll twice and take the best. And that's actually a pretty good way of getting people to consider constitution as a highlight characteristic, because otherwise, frankly, there wasn't that much reason to do it. I mean, you're probably not looking at being, I don't know, what's it used for? Resisting poison or disease. You're probably not looking forward to your character, wandering through that many measle-infested snake pits. But if it gets you, the ability to get better rolls on your hit dice, then suddenly that becomes a priority. So some useful little bits of polish and buff in this that I really do like. And it's got the expected things for hirelings, and they've also got sort of associates, NPCs that kind of follow you around, as well as, you know, your henchmen and these sorts of things, and vehicle rules. So it's got the tools that you need to run a campaign. I do like those little extra bits of shine that you could do for. They've got some interesting ones on the rolling of hit points and so forth. So, you know, worth having a think about as your house rule. There's a Judge's Shield. Now, the weird thing about this is it doesn't really have much of the combat information on it. What you've got on this, it's full of things that actually umpires are constantly asked about. Meals and lodging, because people are always stopping off at a tavern, or how much do we have. It's got things like the effects of having low hit points. In this one, when you get to 0, you can only like crawl around or deliver a message. When you get to negatives, you're immobilized and you die when you're at level 10. But it's got all these effects down here. It's got situational modifiers for combat and so forth. It's got the charts for turning undead, how that works. How it works is you roll, and if you succeed, depending on the strength of the undead, you roll a certain dice type to see how many of them you turn. So what is it? Yeah, if it's a common thing like a skeleton or something, you'll turn 1 to 12 of them. So you can make those things flee like mice. It's got movement rates and these sorts of things. But what it doesn't have is all of the weapons and damage and things like that. To be honest, D&D, you just memorize these things. It's not that complex a game. It's got lots of rules, but it's not that complex a game. Castles and Crusades has some really excellent support, as I said. I sometimes find that their pre-done dungeons are a little bit hard to read and navigate through. They've got a strange kind of wall of text style that they do. Makes Snoots' eyes bleed. It does. Yes, I'll do my Blofeld here as I speak about it. Town of Calais, which I said is actually, it honestly is a good city. I love city adventures. They do have some interesting monster supplements and so on for it, and they do have a very detailed world for it. For those of us who want very detailed worlds, I often find I do not need one. Absolutely do not need one. I always like the advice that came from the Dungeon Crawl Classics guys and so on, where their thought was, you just make the place the people are in. You give that to them and you tell them what's around it, and you put a few kind of vague adventure hooks in that, and they will find their own thing. If you say they live in this village and that road there goes off to a larger town, which is the Big Smoke, you've been to that a few times, you know that beyond there that probably links off to a city or a couple of other towns. That road there goes to a old deserted sawmill and a little deserted hamlet. Those guys got really frightened about stuff that was in the forest and left. There's a mountain over there which has a like a ruined tower on it. People stay away from that because they say it's haunted. And sometimes in the full moon, people say that lake over there, you can see like a ghostly city, kind of like shimmering as if it's actually sitting on the lake. Provide that sort of information and the characters will give you your campaign. They will go out and they will look for things. So yeah, having massively detailed games worlds is a thing, but it doesn't really affect play normally. Role-playing characters are not that deeply invested normally in the socio-economic relationships between between Siam and Khmer while they are wandering around through like the equivalent of medieval Scotland. So, however you want to play, folks, however you want to play. But look, in summation, Castles and Crusades, I think, is the best of the redos of classic D&D. I've seen others like the Shadow Dark and so on, which all have their quirks and run off quirks. Castles and Crusades does not do that. It runs off having a good, solid, completely logical and understandable system that unifies the entire game so it can be taught to people immediately. You can explain it in seconds. Smoothing out a lot of the old kind of weird faux pas and strange informational glitches that were in original D&D and making a more accessible, smoother and more logical version. That's it. And it gives you character classes, which you can then vary by having your races. It gives you that extra layer of choice about what characteristics are you going to highlight, which brings flavor and character into that player character. And it gives you some growth in skill and abilities as you go up levels, not to the extent you would find in like 3rd edition D&D and beyond, but it does give you something more than just a couple of hit points. And in so doing, it solves those problems that were caused by a lot of the strange side rules in basic and advanced D&D about weapons mastery and mastery and weapons mastery that got into mental tongue twisters. They always took the clearest, simplest and most effective path, and to my mind that is good game design right there. So hats off, love these guys. I'm glad that they've got like a steady printer. There'll be no problems with supplies or anything for Troll Lord games, definitely. Go take a look. The new edition, Castles and Crusades. I love it. In fact, and as time of recording, it's Saturday, so tomorrow, Sunday, we get to play in my new campaign of this. Actually, using, where is it? They brought out a Barsoom guidebook. It's just a little quickie one, but yeah, I'm going to do a Sword and Planet thing, which is another fling back to original D&D, because if you look at original D&D books, they've got green Martians in them as characters. Anyway, go take a look at Castles and Crusades. I know it's hard times out there for a lot of people, particularly in the LGBTQ community. Looked after your personal safety, but remember, live magnificently and fight the bastards. Right, much love to everybody. You want to turn off? He wants to turn off.